Hey there, fellow entrepreneurs. I'm Sue, and you've just stepped into Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. Every week, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine, a remarkable entrepreneur who's not just changing the world, but also harnessing a secret weapon, time outdoors. Together, we'll dive into their journey, unpack invaluable business advice, and discover why embracing the wild is not just good for the soul, but also a goldmine for inspiration and innovation. Ready to uncover the secret that's boosting bottom lines and fueling joy? Hit subscribe and join us in the wild. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm excited to introduce Kelly Cronin. She's an entrepreneur who's making waves in vacation rentals and veterinary tech education. This is so cool. She's the founder of Cronin's Castles, which creates magical vacation experiences and vet tech life. She's there too now. So a platform that it offers affordable continuing education for vet techs. Aren't they wonderful? We love our pets, and who's helping them but vet techs. So her innovative CE on the Sea, that's so cool, program combines professional development and travel. And this is really cool. She's got some amazing stories of what this is, the opportunities that this has opened for people who attend this as well. With a background in veterinary technology and business, Kelly brings a unique perspective to both ventures. She's transforming vacations and professional growth opportunities all in one person. So get ready to meet an entrepreneur who's redefining experiences in travel and education. Kelly, welcome to Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. I'm really happy that you're here.
Ooh, thank you so much for inviting me on. This has been super fun already, and we haven't even gotten started.
I know, we're just getting going. So I always start with the same question, but who are you serving and what problems are you helping to solve for them?
So we have a pretty wide group of folks that we're serving. In our vacation rentals, really, we're serving anyone who wants luxury without the luxury. Like, nobody wants filled toilets. Nobody wants some butler to bring you XYZ. Really, someone who wants to be able to have the luxury of empty beaches or the luxury of staying in bed all cozy and watching the northern lights. You know, it's just a different kind of luxury. And that can really speak to families. That can really speak to individual travelers. We have so many different groups that actually really enjoy that. We have young, we have old, you kind of name it. And then in terms of the CE and that type of thing, we're really talking to veterinary technicians first and foremost, but veterinarians have been on the cruise before and we do not discriminate. And really that speaks to folks who want upper level education. So we bring some of the best veterinary technician specialists in the entire business or specialist doctors into this cruise, and we provide a really, really unique education experience with lots of practical knowledge and at an affordable price point that people can actually do on a veterinary technician's wage, which is pretty amazing.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're making millions usually. So what an opportunity to get to go on a cruise, and you have to do your CE anyhow. So
absolutely.
Their CE, like you mentioned before we were recording, you mentioned like some of the folks, like what has this meant for them being on these cruises?
So generally we have a lot of firsts on the cruise, and we actually make it a huge point to actually take some time and really discuss some of the firsts that people are experiencing, because some of them are so incredibly impactful. We've had a couple of people who've never been out of their city and now are going on this international cruise. Many who've never been out of the state, many who've never been out of the country, out of the US. There are people who have never seen the ocean. There was someone who had never seen a pelican. There was someone who had never seen a dolphin, and she got to kiss one. It was just such an incredible experience for people to actually be able to do these things. People were swimming with manatees. People were, just doing these incredible adventurous things. And it's all because they were able to use some of their CE funds from work. They were able to save. They had a payment plan associated with it. And it was just kept very, very affordable for each of our 6 past sailings, certainly for our sailings coming up as well.
That's so amazing. Like, that's got to feel so satisfying personally, going, wow.
It's just incredible. And I really thank the two founders, Moira and Casey, for having brought me into this and allowed me to really continue on their legacy. But it's just, It's such a quality experience. And, we send out a survey after the fact. I never get anything other than, hey, it'd be great to have XYZ at the snack bar, which we don't control because it's a cruise. But it's just one of those things where I really love the fact that people are so incredibly appreciative and so incredibly supportive of it, right? We have people who've gone on their second, third, fourth cruises at this point.
Wow.
Which
They're
is pretty
hating it then.
incredible.
Clearly they hate it. It's just awful.
They never want to come back again, except they're on their fourth cruise.
That's really, really something. Wow. All right. Now you mentioned, there were founders involved. And so give your little, what's the entrepreneurial journey been like?
So it really was posing a question, right? We were in a pretty big chat group. And at the time I had said, what are the really interesting, I was just getting started in speaking. And I said, what are the really interesting CE events for veterinary technicians? Are there any international ones? Are there any national ones? Are there ones in warm places? Like, what exists out there? Are there any cruises? And when I asked that question, are there any cruises? I was incredibly blessed to be in the right place at the right time, where both Moira and Casey, who had started Vet Tech Life, chimed in, oh, we're working on a CE cruise. And then incredibly blessed that they said, come along for the journey, and really help us with the marketing and help us with the CE production and help us with this and that and the other thing. And then I was just able to, become part of that tag along crew until just recently they decided to actually both retire out of Vet Tech Life, and effectively I was able to take over the business. And now, running that very, very large veterinary technician group, 70,000 plus members, closer to 80,000 at this point. It's just been a really incredible journey in terms of, how do we really leverage what I can do as a single solopreneur, and how can I really leverage all of the goodwill that they've established over all of these cruises and all these years. And it's been incredible. It's just been incredible.
That really is. It was just like everything aligned. You found these founders, they needed what you had this great idea, they were already kind of working it, like it went with the flow. That's so cool.
And it's been such an incredible thing to just see it growing every year. Oh, I haven't never heard of that before. Oh, I heard about that one.
Yeah. Oh, that's really something. It's making, sorry for the pun, I can't help it, but it's making a splash. Like, that's not.
It is. Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that.
Use it.
Our hashtag up until now has been banning boring CE, but I like making a splash too.
I like it. You can have more than one, right?
There you go.
And then how did the short-term rental thing figure into this? Like into your, I know they're not connected, but how did that, draw you in? And, you have a big position with Vet Tech Life. That would be, quote, enough for some people, like capacity wise, but you're like, wait, no, there's more. How'd that happen?
Well, the short-term rentals actually started and morphed from long-term rentals. We actually had moved out of New Mexico. I had a house that I had bought, and that kind of speaks to the financial independence, drive that I have as well, to try and help veterinary technicians with financial independence. We had bought a house that was on something called a land lease, where you actually lease it from the pueblo, and it makes it a little bit harder to actually sell. And so when we moved out of New Mexico, I really had to figure out how to make sure that that house was actually taken care of, and how to make sure that it was, financially benefiting me if it was going to stay in my name. And we started renting it. And I was really charmed by the fact that I got to see the value of the house come up, that I got the tax advantages associated with it, that I had a pretty decent renter. A little bit funny, occasionally a rooster would show up at the house and drive the neighbors insane, or occasionally, the washer and dryer would be outside the house, and God only knows why stuff like that happens. But it was a good enough experience that it really led me to think, man, if I really want to get into a lifestyle that allows me a little bit more fluidity of time, that allows me to retire on things that are making money while I'm sleeping, how can I really think about that, and about really capitalizing on being able to travel to places that I love with the very fiber of my soul. Similar to you with your retreat center, like how can I make sure that I have an opportunity to continue coming back to places that resonate with me? And what I'll say is that we had a couple of false starts along the way. The big message here is don't allow something not working to make the whole idea defunct, right? We had tried to purchase a small tiny home cabin on the Wisconsin River up in Wisconsin Dells. It turns out the realtor had lied. There was no easement. We had tried to purchase a tiny home park. It was a former RV park down in Tierra Amarilla. Turns out the seller had lied, and it was actually owned by more than 30 people. At that point, we had a full website and all of the money to actually purchase it, and everything was situated. But what you learn from something not working out is as important as what you learn from things working out. And so in the process thereof, those two didn't work out. The next part of that journey really was I found a tiny home in Utah, and I made an offer on it, and I was accepted, and the seller backed out. And then I found a tiny home in a small roundhouse in Vieques, Puerto Rico. And I loved it, and it was amazing. And it was untitled, and we ended up still purchasing that on owner finance, but that one took forever. And then I found a geodesic dome, and just the communication process with that realtor. And so I had kind of given up on each of those projects, only to have all of them come to fruition and culmination at the same time period. So you never know what's going to happen or not happen. And it's just a matter of being flexible enough to really think in terms of, how does this serve my overall goal? And realigning your goals every 6 months or so. I actually tend to sit down and realign my goals in June. So I have the rest of the year to try and, get to where I anticipate being, so that the year is not a wash, and then start over again. And that was really one of those situations where I love where we ended up, but how we got there was the most circuitous path ever.
For sure.
So,
and how did you keep yourself going? Like it's a lot to go into, running into the wall so many places, and then all of a sudden the wall's open, you've got this thing. Like, what is it about you, or what have you developed in yourself this is a measure of resilience for sure, but also
I think it speaks to AD&D or ADHD being a superpower.
It is.
Like it's just one of those situations where if you can just imagine the next best thing and, change your direction a little bit quickly, you can bring things out of what look like ashes for sure.
Yeah. You're able to like zip, zag, zig, all the Z words.
All of the Z words.
That's amazing. What do you see for like going forward? What's the big dream? What would you love to see that you turn around and you're like, that's what I created?
So my big goal is always to put family and travel first, and to potentially have a little bit more of a nomadic lifestyle. I do get a little bit stuck in the fact that I have a 14-year-old who wants to finish her brick and mortar school. So that's 4 additional years, right, yeah, of brick and mortar, like stationaryism. But we spend a lot of time traveling in support of all of the things that we do, whether it be speaking at bigger conventions, the CE cruise, or, just supporting our vacation rentals. And so we get enough travel to kind of keep us really engaged and happy. I think the big thing would be to definitely get to the point where we have all of the vacation rentals that we currently have up and running. The amount of work that goes into building off-grid in Alaska is interesting, or building off-grid in Wisconsin. We're putting in a tiny glamping ground with 80 acres worth of crazy tree houses, and over river A-frame, and school buses and things like that. And that's been one of those situations where you don't anticipate how much work something is until you really start, building your Trello and making sure that everything is kind of lined out as to this is step one, step two. And so I think that the big end all goal would be when I'm finally ready to pull the trigger and quit the day job effectively, that I'll have the capacity to be really nomadic, as nomadic as we want to be.
I can see that happening. And then too, it's like you've got this built-in advantage of you'll have all these places that you could go, and then more
exactly.
to Man, all right. I wanted to ask you, how are you funding these things? This is, an 80, whatever this is incredible. Like, I know as we're building a multi-million-dollar project and we're bootstrapping, we'll be looking for investors. How have you done this so far? Because that's an amazing accomplishment as far as you've already gotten and where you're headed.
Well, you talk about bootstrapping, and we've done a lot of bootstrapping. So the big thing with bootstrapping is really thinking in terms of just about anything can be done without cash. I will tell you, there's tons of millionaires who recognize that not using their own cash is the way into everything that they want to do. And so one of the things that we really think in terms of are just making sure that we use seller financing as much as possible. Making sure that, we use crowdsourcing when possible. I have a ton of friends who create a concept idea and potentially sell nights ahead of time. We haven't gone that far yet, but it's been a situation where, I've done a pretty decent job of finding places and doing the research on them to make sure that what I'm purchasing, even if it's sight unseen, is worth more than the land. So even if the structure is not viable, even if the structure needs to be a complete raise, I can say, well, I'm still value ahead. So for example, we had found a small tiny home in Utah, went back and forth in terms of the seller backing out, and finally closed on it, and then couldn't find it. But the reality is that it exists, finally found it out in the middle of nowhere, and then found out through the state, as we were getting permitting for a big, large deck, that unfortunately the structure was not permitted. And so the good news is, having done the research ahead of time, even though the structure was not viable and not continued forward, the land itself was worth significantly more than what I paid for it. And so just making sure that I've always got that open mind to see whatever I can see down the road, trying to bootstrap it, and then just making sure that I've got a little bit of a safety net there associated with it. Same thing with our geodesic dome in Kasilof, Alaska. That house is, we purchased it for $40,000 cash on scene, and the land itself was worth close to 80. So even if I found out that the structure was defunct, I was still going to be okay in terms of that. And now that, the rehab has predominantly been done, we're at like 95% complete, it's worth significantly more than I ever put into it. And so that's the safety net associated with each of these things that we do.
That's so smart. And sometimes that works out just by default because, land values go up, which is a beautiful thing, like I've seen that. Oh, okay, great. Like 6 months in, or sometimes the seller has, been holding on to land so long that they don't know really what they've got, I think. So
yeah,
that's interesting. How do you, you have a lot going on, like a lot, like 60-hour weeks with this and then this and then. How do you take time out in nature, or, and then, cold where you are right now? Like, there's a lot there. How do you prioritize that time? How do you justify taking that time? And, what happens for you while you're outside and in nature?
I do a lot of multitasking. So if I'm out on a hike, I'm also thinking and, letting the phone take some notes. Or if I'm hanging in a hammock, that's work time. I can hang in a hammock, enjoy the sounds of the cookie frogs, and, hang out with our green iguana Bob on the porch. Oh, I love him. He's so great. He likes to sit on the porch and eat papaya. And so, God forbid you sit out there and you're trying to work, he is kind of in your way. But I think that's part of it, right? Is just making sure that as much as possible, I'm being intentional about how I'm doing my work as much as doing my work. So really thinking about, do I have a beach day? Cool. Well, a portion of that is probably going to be me working on a website, or me making sure that I've got emails answered, or working on a lawsuit, or whatever that happens to be. But also, I'm on a beach.
Yeah, that's huge. That's so huge. How do you, what role would you say content marketing has played in your business? Because in both businesses, because there's so much, you have such great stories, there's case studies that could be done, you've got these incredible stories from the vet techs, how they've been changed, you've got these beautiful places and spaces that people can go. How do you do that?
I think one of the biggest things that kind of came along early in life is that I'm a terrible self-promoter.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as that goes, I'm probably the worst person as far as putting out content and just making sure that I leverage the content that I have. And one of the things that I think has been really impactful is recognizing that there are so many people putting out really, really good content that seeks to validate the things that you are trying to do. And so, for example, this last year, we actually had, the very great pleasure of having a couple of podcasters actually speaking on our cruise. And one of the things that I've really kind of learned through that is leveraging someone else's audience is a huge, huge thing. We're talking right now, I'm leveraging your audience to say, hey, if you haven't ever been to an island off an island in Puerto Rico, let me help you. Or, you're an entrepreneur, you want to grow into a short-term rental business, let me help you. But when we're thinking about that, just recognizing that the power of connection is almost more important than the power of the story, because other people can help tell your story too. And I think too, that if you're creating something that you really truly believe in, if you're really on board with what you're doing, that is incredibly easy to tell that story. It's incredibly easy to talk about Vieques, Puerto Rico all day long, twice on Sunday. It's incredibly easy to talk about Alaska all day long and twice on Sunday. It's so incredibly easy to talk about a place where you can go stay in a treehouse or stay in an A-frame over a river and watch the river flow underneath you. That's not hard to tell stories like that. And so I think, I might not be the creme de la creme in terms of content creation. I think we all get kind of hedgerowed into that. Oh, I'm not a great photographer. How do I really tell this story? Well, there are ways to create network that actually help you do that without taking time away from the things that really create a better experience for whatever you're doing. I'd say one of the best relationships that we formed early on was we formed a relationship with a photographer who came out and did just amazing long exposure photographs of the house and Vieques in general, and just these beautiful, beautiful images. Go over to www.croninscastles.com if you want to see some of them. And we created that by offering a free stay in exchange for all these images. And I'm not saying to, pull the trigger with every Instagrammer who says that they have a following. I'm really saying, hey, content creation is something that is totally worth investing in. And if you're not the best content creator, leverage someone else to help you do what you do.
That's huge. That's so huge. I always tell clients because they're all, people will come, they're like, oh, my content, the hardest business in the world to write for is your own.
Yeah.
Even if I'm same. I've been a professional writer 20 years. It's very hard to, I get that. And I love that point of, bringing other people in, let them tell the story, because that's really what's, it's so much more, it's more credible, it's more fascinating. It's all of that. And they may know things about their experience that you would never have even guessed. The thing that, oh, wow, that was the best thing. What the heck,
We run all kinds of we run all kinds of contests, shall we say, and we do a survey after each and every cruise with the idea of, hey, really making sure that we're leveraging the content that our cruise goers are doing, right? Or, we love the fact that people use our hashtag for Vieques Sea House to actually, share the things that they found so exciting about this island where people are outnumbered by horses, and, there's 121 beaches, and there's the brightest bio bay in the world. I'm never going to get to the point where my photography is good enough to capture bio bay. And if you guys don't know what that is, there's this phytoplankton in the water that actually makes everything glow, not grow,
Oh, I've heard
glow.
of that. Oh.
And you'll actually, if you go in some of the glass bottom kayaks, you'll see dolphins swimming underneath you. You'll see rays, and you'll see, the glow coming off of your oars as you're kayaking through. And it's just the most magical thing in the world, but it can't be captured with regular photography. And so the reality is, am I ever going to be able to make that content? No, absolutely not. But I can leverage someone else's. And, that not only supplies my business with some insight and some shareability and things like that, but it also helps their business. And, the more that we can help everyone grow, the better off we're going to be.
Oh, for sure. That's incredible. And I love that sense of cooperating, basically. It's like, hey, you can come stay here. You've got this talent, this skill that's going to help me, a leverage thing. It gets kind of a bad name, like it's this corporate leverage buyout type of thing, but it's really a matter of cooperating and not to make another pun, but that whole thing of, all rising tide raises all ships. So there you go.
Community is such an incredibly bonding force, and it's such an incredibly great way of being an entrepreneur. And there's so many times where, there's another CE cruise that exists out there. It's a veterinary CE cruise as opposed to veterinary technician. I'm not competing against them. They're not competing against me. The awareness that we exist is something that both of us can really gather, and the same thing for the vacation rentals on that tiny, tiny island of Vieques. If I have a situation where I'm booked, I'm going to absolutely share the people that are not, that are still looking for a booking that day, and we can really leverage what each other does. And to be entirely frank, you can ask 20 people and 2 of them have ever heard of it. So it's all about making sure that there's an awareness that we all grow together.
Oh yeah, I love that. All right, Kelly, where can people find out more? There's going to be a lot, so let's do that, because you got a lot of things. There's a lot of places.
Absolutely.
Would appeal.
So we do have a Facebook page, a couple of them actually. Vet Tech Life is the Facebook page for our Vet Tech Life cruise. Vet Tech Life CE on the Sea is very cruise specific. Cronin's Castles, there's a Facebook page for that, and the Vieques Sea House, and In a Nutshell on Squirrel Street in Kasilof, Alaska. And we also have an Instagram, Cronin's Castles, and vettechlife.com. You can certainly find out things from my personal pages, Kelly Lynn Cronin. And we have 2 websites that we'd love for you to come visit, www.vettechlife.com and www.croninscastles.com. And by all means, message me if you have questions, or if you need help starting up, or if you want to think through something. I'm always there to bounce anything off of that you can think of.
I love that. That is so cool. I'm picturing here's a vet tech who also wants to go, it could be the same person through all of it.
So it's amazing how you would actually find that. There's so many folks that, you see them in one place, and then you think to yourself, well, that's not how I know them. And that's kind of an incredible feeling, is to create that type of cross community as well.
It is. And it's that sense too. I think that your personal brand of, here's Kelly Cronin, here's what she does, like that, that's going to be, all right, they come in as this, they're going to stay for that. That's really, I mean, that is true service, is when you're able to really deeply serve people on such an incredible level. But that's really
And
cool.
at this point, we've had so many people who've kind of partaken in everything, who've
Yeah.
been to Vieques, Puerto Rico, who have been on the veterinary cruise, who are on the wait list for In a Nutshell up in Alaska. Like it's just one of those things where the outpouring of support and the cross support is just incredibly appreciated.
So cool. Well, it speaks to the excellence of everything that you offer as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited for this one to go live.
Fantastic. Me too.